Pahlavi text translated by E.W. West, Part 4. Contents of the Nasks, Clareton, Oxford University Press, 1892. Dinkard, Book 8, Chapter 43, 1. One section is miscellaneous, about having sought an assistant who is brought, that is, in what mode it is proper, and the payment of an assistant who is a member of the community, Daham, and also that of a foreigner, An-A'ir, in the same affair. 2. About how the coming of a man to confinement and fettering is through his own wealth, and whatever is on the same subject. 3. About confession through 1, 2, and 3 statements, and whatever is about it. 4. About the contempt of a disciple for a priestly master, which is an annoyance to him, the property belonging to the master, and the squandering that occurs in it. 5. The sin that is its own penalty through being liable to penalty, and the transgressor whose penalty is owing thereto, when they would unlawfully bring a penalty upon one liable to penalty, or one thereby inflicts a penalty upon him, of which one is aware that he is not capable, patuko, and the time which one liable to penalty has for the payment of that penalty of his is until his attaining to opulence, when after the appointment about the penalty he becomes capable of an atonement. 6. About the accumulation, gangi, of sin through the expedients of the wrathful, garmakan, which are connected with much destruction of the righteous. 7. About the sin owing to which, among those that are wrathful, he who is drunk from a well on a road or path conceals the water for the sake of concealment. 8. About the sin of a judge who pronounces the sinner to be in innocence and the innocent to be in some sinfulness. 9. About a judge acquainted with the law for 10 years, him who is for 11, him who is for 12, him who is for 13, him who is for 14, and him who is for 15. That is, their decisions, each separately on several specially prominent objects of acquaintance with the law as regards decision and judgment. 10. About a daughter whose religious control during the life of her father resides in her mother, for the joint life of the mother, but for the authorized giving her away, there is the father. 11. About a daughter who is unprovided with a husband, and who has no father and no mother, nor yet any of the brothers of the departed parents, and it is not even allowable to give herself away in the guardianship by a husband. 12. About property which is bequeathed by will on passing away, that is, how it is when given, and how it is when it does not exist. 13. About the privilege of a father in giving property to his children according to his wish, and a son who is irreverent towards his father, so that some of the property of the father goes to the worthy mother. Also, when they would make irreverence towards the father, the imputed characteristic, bakt, nisano, where a decree about the property of the father is decided upon, and upon whatever is on the same subject as regards the extent of irreverence of the son towards the father and the sin of it. 14. About the sin of a son who is accepted when he recoils from that acceptance, the acceptor of a living or even a departed father is so because it is the will of the people, and also for the worldly fame of a soul of the departed, and the ceremonial and obeisance are, moreover, for those of them within their own dwelling, owing to the letting forth of their generosity, and they shall provide them. 15. About the production and arising of even that property which a liberal person has not seen, if there be any one who has not lived liberally. 16. About the production and arising of something of the property of a damsel, even when she gives it by design only to him who is worthy. 17. About a damsel who is an idolater, Deviast, carries off from her own master and will give to a Mazda worshipper, that is, how it is justifiable for the Mazda worshipper, having had that damsel in his possession, to seek a son by her, so long as the guardianship of the woman is with that man. 18, about a mother being guardian over a living father, owing to their having a son. 19, about the proper completion of a provision that was for the decision of the Supreme Judge on various statements, and was never otherwise, which is the provision of him who is a high priest of the religion. 20, about the sin of a father through not satisfying the menstrual excitement of a daughter who has attained the capability of having a son. Berman Radi, what it is when, through not satisfying the menstrual excitement of the daughter, he is sinful, and how it is when the daughter herself is sinful. Also the symptoms of attaining the capability of having a son. 21, about where and which is that sin, on the committal of which is inadvertently one attains to deliverance thus. When it comes to his knowledge, it is through a determined renunciation it goes away from its source, also which is that committal inadvertently which does not occur through him who is intelligent. 22, about the four more heinous forms of demon service, Sada, Yazaki, and the three worst sins wherein they shall perform them, the 10 existences that are furtherances, and the 9 that are destroyers of the world. 23, about a true statement through which, when one utters it, he is wicked and worthy of death. 24, about deriving the bestowable benefit of the spiritual existence away from the world. When he who is destroying a righteous man walks openly in the world, how one section of the spirit's earth is that of a people's destroying the righteous man, and the complaint of the spirit's fire, water, and plants, owing thereto. Also, how the bestowal of the allotment of a leading man is upon his inferiors. 25, about the three kinds of righteous men, people. One that is greater than water and earth, animals and plants, one that is equal to them, and one that is less, and what is the arrangement of, as it were, the conjoined formation of those who are somewhat outside of the three kinds. 26, about the grievous bridge judgment for carrying forth dead matter to water or to fire, with which there is evidence, and the heaviness of the spirit due to dead matter in the water. 27, the work of him who brings the dead matter of man or dog, or that of the serpent or frog out of the water. 28, about the destruction of the serpent and frog and other aquatic noxious creatures in the water, when it is only thus possible, and carrying them out from it when it is possible. 29, about the gratification of the spirit of the world and the vexation of the demons owing to the destruction of them. 30, where and what are the tokens of the good management and well-operating drinking party, tosti, of a neighbor, not of the same district, aham shatro nazd. 31, about the sin of him who, after joining a drinking party from sunset, who frashmok dado, pulverizes the road, ra tek nun edo, keeps the door open, and would unlawfully make an uproar. 32, about Uharmazd, having produced the bodies and members of the animals, through having created the body of the soul-created ox with satisfaction, as assistance for mankind, because they are repeated for protection, and also for the ceremonial for sacred beings, specially declared. 33, about the reason of making offerings, usto frido, to the sacred beings for the increase of power of the allotters of destiny and the allotment of destiny, the connection of that acknowledgement, padirisno, and of the benefit and advantage of the recompense thereof, and the proper maintenance of that acknowledgement through the means and efficacy of the spiritual bridge, judgment of sin, and the fear of worldly disaster and harm from not properly maintaining the perpetual acknowledgement and force, Den Patuki, and from the setting up even of ruin thereby, the reasonable control of the offering to each one of the sacred beings therein is for the skillful member of the community who narik daham of whatever kind. It is not produced by entrusting the consecration to the violent, more particularly to those whom one specially enumerates the sin and retribution owing to having given it to those who are of that class. And more upon the same subject, 34, about the damage and injury of the world owing to greed, Azo and its fellow creations, and him who is their supporter and abettor, the idolater, Deviasto, also the wolf of many kinds and noxious creatures of various species, because the occurrence of their fiendishness is due to the original fiend, and the means for strengthening their fiendishness are derived from the destruction of all mankind, and the other primary worldly creations, which are aiding mankind, 35, advice to mankind about smiting and destroying the evil domination, Deus Kshas Arini Dano of the world by those injurers, and the merit manifest for themselves therein, the object and spiritual reward for smiting and killing each one of the wolves and noxious creatures, and as regards the same reward, the perfection of that for destroying a two-legged wolf, and whatever's on the same subject, 36, about advice as to not referencing the evil spirit and demons, whereby the observing varzo of the several ceremonies and gratifications of the sacred beings would be more particularly irregular in any manner whatever, and the damage and harm owing to those who are irregular and ill-observant through being inclined for that irregularity and ill-observance would become an oppressive precedence, pad gahi, of the demons over the creatures, also the vice of clamorous talking, tra yun gogi, and the damage owing thereto, and the pleasure of the demons due to the same, and other things which are irregular. 37, about advice about the reason, habit, and primitive practice of not chattering, and other good customs during eating and drinking, the gratification of the sacred beings, owing to that primitive practice of good customs by mankind, and the unself-devoting kves dak is he who is not maintaining it. 38, through the ceremonial of which sacred being is the greater welcome, mahma no tari, of a high priest, and of any good work of each one of the 5 periods of the day and night, the reward and advantage owing to celebrating the ceremony of each of them separately in its own period, and also other means and regulations in the same statement. 39, it is righteousness that is perfect excellence. Now, Islam also has this concept of 5 ritual prayers between dusk and dawn, before that the evening, and then dawn to sunrise, and then early afternoon, and then late afternoon. And one of the things that the Islamic empires were to do was to allow everybody their religious freedom, but some things were exceptions. The incestuous marriage, the forced marriage, the going about killing the sort of creatures that you didn't like, to the point of, roaming the countryside. It's one thing when a snake or a bug or something invades your home, or something crawls on you when you're off out in the forest, but, this attempt to extinguish whole species, that was not considered acceptable. And what was the other one? Polyandry. In India, in particular, there was this idea that up to 10 nobles could get the same woman pregnant at the same time. It's like, obviously, it was only one of their kids, but, you know. One would think this was something to justify something that happened at one point. It's like, oh, well, no, she was, this woman and these 10 other dudes, this was, they were all her husband. And they all equally made her pregnant. That's how those stories go. I mean, literally, that's what they believe. And no, there's not one Hindu religion.